come home to yourself. Labels are head stuff.
Yeah.
And if we get too hung up on head stuff, then we can be holding ourselves back from just the joy of living.
I think the toughest part is to actually be able to sit down with your own self. And
You need to decide what you want to do.
hello, and a very warm welcome to you all. I am delighted to have someone who's very close to my heart, and someone who has been um, an inspiration in very unconventional ways for me. Um, Someone who actually helped me look beyond, the really, living in the head, and a very kind soul, a beautiful soul, someone that you would almost instantly fall in love with. And I'm happy to introduce Reb Veale. Reb, welcome to the shift.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We
I'm
we have
so
we have a
excited to be
clapping
with
thing
you.
as well. Let me do the clapping. Yeah, a bit late, but works.
Lovely. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really looking forward to the conversation and wherever it leads.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here. Uh, you were one of the first few people that I approached, and as gracious as you are, you've always, you've never said no. I think, uh, I know you have your boundaries, but they're so beautifully maintained that you really hear a no. So you almost immediately said a yes, and then we had to reschedule as well, and you still managed to be here. So great, thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. It's a privilege.
It is a privilege for me more than for anyone else. So let me just you've had quite a journey, right? From South Africa to England to France, where you are, from being an anthropologist to corporate to NLP and mBIT. Um, what's really happening behind the scenes?
Mm, it's an amazing question. Do you know, it's funny. I remember, and this is a theme that's happened throughout my life, actually. I remember when I was a kid, I was at school, and I remember teachers saying, you need to decide what you want to do. You need to specialize. You need to focus. You need to narrow your path down. And it didn't feel relevant to me. And I remember then I was at university, and I remember them saying, you need to think about career. What do you want to do? And you need to focus and narrow it down. It just didn't feel right. And a few years later, well into my career, when I was employed and I went on the first coaching skills weekend. It was that long ago. It was in the last century. I'm just saying. And I remember them saying for the whole weekend, it was a bit of pressure selling for the whole weekend. It wasn't really me, but I learned a lot. And all weekend they were saying, if you want to go into coaching, you've got to have a niche, you've got to specialize. And, I got a bit. I'm a little, for those of your listeners or viewers who know about NLP, I'm a bit of a mismatcher sometimes. And so when they were saying, you've got to focus, got to narrow down, I was thinking, I'm going to be the only coach of one-handed, single parent, um, Mongolian goat herds, something like that. I'm going to be the only coach for them. Now, the thing is, the reason that was coming from me is I'm happy being a generalist because I recognize it wasn't about division and objectivity and niching. For me, it was always about people, pure and simple. And there's 8.25 billion humans on the planet, probably 8.1 billion of them occasionally have challenges. And I think that's being quite generous. Most of us do.
Yes.
And actually, what's going on is my only wish ever has been to support other humans the way I would wish to be supported, and to bring whatever I can bring, presence mostly, to the situation so that they can come to their own perspective, their own wisdoming. So, yeah, that's kind of what's going on.
That so is it a quest of giving to the world what you couldn't have?
Yeah, it's so for my clients or for me or both.
For you,
For
particularly
me,
from your perspective, yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's I don't go a whole bunch on labels. I think they can be useful as we sometimes say a starter for 10. Um, they give you a launch point, but beyond that, labels, as you know, as a certified mBIT coach, labels are head stuff.
Yeah.
And if we get too hung up on head stuff at the expense of other stuff, then we can be holding ourselves back from just the joy of living and the capacity to be fully present. And that seems to me to be the point of being here.
Yeah, yeah. And I also hear you on the labels part, because at max a label is an introduction, right? It's like a name tag that you have, but who Reb really is, the three letters of REB cannot tell me unless I interact with Reb, and unless I get to know her persona, the person, the what ticks her off, what drives her, and so on. So there's a lot more to people than labels. And uh, in my coaching practice, and I'm sure for you as well, you must have come across a lot of people with a lot of labels. How did you, and for your own self as well? I mean, um, I know you were in South Africa in the 80s, and that was a tough time to be in South Africa because all the things that were going on.
Mm.
So how's that played for you?
It's so I'm originally from the UK, and I was in South Africa 86, 87, which, as you say, was a um, challenging and turbulent time there. And yeah, it's interesting to notice that the people who mostly bought into using labels, and it's not just that time and that country, but all over the world and now as well, tend to be the people who see differences and distinctions, sometimes at the expense of what we have in common, what we share. And of course, both are important. It's important to notice how I'm different to you, how our practice differs, how our perspectives and our preferences differ. It's also important, I feel, to know what we share and how we are experiencing things in the same moment. The miracle of being alive at all, much less coinciding in our lifetimes and having been also in the same physical space. I'm lucky enough to have shared sacred space with you in physically in presence as well. Um, so for me, that's a theme actually that's been coming out a lot for me recently in supervision that I do and in my own supervision. That the world is in quite, it feels to me, quite an either or place. It's
Now,
black and white,
particularly.
east or west, right or wrong. And they're not arbitrary. Well, they are arbitrary concepts. They're concepts, they're head stuff. And actually, life is a whole lot more nuanced, blurry, grey, messy, magnificent than all of that. And
Yeah.
so it feels to me that the more we can, the more we can flex and grow our tolerance for sitting in the discomfort and the messiness of now, and the more we can sit with another, whether that's one other or the state of the world, more more generally, then that feels to me to be a worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah, but that's a tough thing to do as well.
For sure. I mean, I'm saying it
Because
doesn't mean to say I find it easy.
yeah, yeah, it's a even sitting. I think the toughest part is to actually be able to sit down with your own self and to recognize the M&Ms, the mess and the magnificence that you possess within you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's so
definitely.
beautiful,
It
only
is
when you recognize
difficult
it.
and challenging. I find
Yes.
it could just be me, but I find as I get older, it gets a little bit easier because I have probably because I have more examples of being an idiot in the past, or or um, I don't know what it is, but I can look back and recognize, oh, do you know what? When I was 17, 18, and in some ways I wish I'd been a better daughter or whatever example it may have been. And in my heart of hearts, I know that it's okay because that was me as well. And I think a previous guest of yours on the shift talked about the famous Umberto Maturana quote: "We're not human doings, we're not even human beings, we're human becomings." And
Yeah.
for me, you know, that's something that I'm continually trying to digest and process and live into, because if I'm not prepared to forgive myself for some of the things that I've done in the past and how I've been, if I'm not prepared to sit with my shadows and the bits I'm not proud of, then how can I celebrate the good stuff either? It's
Yeah.
a form of dissociation, and that's just not how we're built as humans. We're designed to be in the moment, associated, fully present, at home with how ridiculous we are and how wonderful, as you say, the M&Ms, messy and magnificent.
Yeah. Yeah. What's Alia, that was the last program, that was Alia, when she said that, and she said something really beautiful. She said that as I look back, when she was saying that as she looks back, she recognizes that it was her previous self, that same person, who actually took that leap of faith to bring her to where she is now. So celebrating that messiness is equally important,
Oh,
because
yeah.
that's also us, as you said as well.
Yeah.
But
I
what is
wholeheartedly
yeah,
agree.
yeah, yeah. So what is one label you've been fighting off for I won't say entire life, but significant tension in your life, or
Yeah.
challenge that you've
Yeah,
wanted to
it's a
wash
really
off?
good question. It's a good question. Deeply unsatisfying, and the honest answer probably is I don't know. um, because I do generally kind of shrug labels off a little bit. And we're very susceptible to labels in our society because you and I have had the conversation before. Our world is in a very head dominant place, and the head likes labels, it likes pigeonholes to slot
Yeah,
people into. It's more convenient as a shortcut or as a heuristic. And have you noticed when you meet people at whether it's networking events or on webinars or at a party or whatever it might be, and you get introduced to someone and they say, "Oh, nice to meet you. My name is Reb. And they give
yes,
you a label. I'm a
yeah,
trainer. I'm a coach. I'm a wife. I'm a yaya, which is Greek for grandma. They'll give you lots of labels or even a status. I'm a master trainer. I'm a ninja meta master. Blah blah. And okay, so some of those things I definitely have as part of my identity, but I try not to see them as, and try not to confuse them for my identity,
Yeah.
because none of them is everything I am. They're aspects or facets of how I am, aspects of my identity, not the whole shebang.
Yeah.
So I notice when I'm on social media, because I do occasionally go on social media, sometimes for joy, sometimes to rant a bit at the state of the world. And, I notice people using labels like, I'm a something ist, or I'm a so and so. And those tend to be the posts that I either scroll on by, or I notice they stimulate something in me. Usually it's that mismatcher again. Usually that doesn't fit. I don't want to be put into a pigeonhole, I guess. So in the past, one of the things that I've trained in is occupational psychology, and I'm really aware that that particular profession spends quite a lot of time often causing people to feel that when they've done a psychometric, for example, that they're given a label. Oh, you're a WXYZ, or you're red, or you're green, or whatever it might be, depending on the framework they're using. And that really falls short. It doesn't capture a millionth of how unique we each are and the gifts that we bring. And so I'm always up for a more nuanced conversation. It's one of the things I really loved when you first invited me onto this the shift. You said, I don't know where it'll end up. I haven't got a script. We'll just start and we'll see where it goes. And that's music to my ears, because that's I mean, like you are as a coach, that's about being fully present, rather than, okay, regardless of whatever you just said, I've got my next question. Let's go there. And
Yeah. Let me
so
pull out the next one.
in terms of labels, that's probably why I don't really identify. They don't hold a lot of currency for me.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about the whole personality tests and all that thing, one of the reasons that, I mean, I've been invited to a lot of such tests, right? Do this course of this training, and sometimes at very, very, very nominal rates as well. And I've always resisted doing that, because how do I put you in a box? Because all my understanding of human beings, whatever little that I have, is that they're so bloody unique. You cannot put them in a box. There is no way I can put you in a box. And it's amazing, right? Same situation, two human beings will react so differently that all science fails, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and same behavior could be for two very opposite reasons. Two very opposite reasons. So how do I put someone in a label, and how do I put it and say that, like physics, X will lead to Y and Y will be the cause of Z, and so on? It doesn't work that way. So yeah, I mean, so did you ultimately fall for any personality test, or have you been clean like me?
Do you know, it's interesting. Like you, I've done so many over the years, and I've certified in a number of different tools over the years as well. Mostly because organisations or particular leaders were used to using a tool. It's interesting, actually. My husband, Mark, so he's also does occupational psychology amongst other things, amongst being a master coach and what have you as well. And he developed a psychometric which is so different. It's so unique compared to other questionnaires. So when he developed Entreplio, which is the leadership syntax questionnaire, which is his questionnaire. He and his business partner decided when they were developing it over a number of years, we're not going to use norm groups. So, in other words, when Joe Blogs takes the questionnaire, a really common thing that people ask is how do I compare with everybody else? Am I like 10% of them, 90% of them? Where am I? And they actually resisted the temptation. So they don't use norm groups at all because they don't want people falling into the trap of, oh, it's okay, I'm like everybody else. Or, oh, I want to be top, but there's no such thing in their questionnaire. So pretty much these days, that's the only one I use, particularly in coaching and coaching senior leaders, because it doesn't put labels on people. It really just starts the conversation. It's interesting, they also start from a presupposition, whereas most psychometrics say there'll be a feedback session, which if I'm let's say I'm the psychometrician and I'm going to do the session with you, you've taken the questionnaire, I have the report. It implies that I know about you just from a questionnaire of 20 minutes. I don't know you. Exactly.
Yeah.
So Entrepleo actually always has an exploration session, which is you have your own questionnaire. I've had a copy of it. And then we just explore, okay, when does this ring true for you? And when doesn't it come out like that? When's your behavior different? And what's that about? So it's really about awareness raising, which for me certainly feels a lot more useful as a place for people to start.
That's a beautiful thing, because um, one of the reasons that I avoid psychometrics is because of exactly the same thing. You're comparing me to norms. To me, it reads more like, those star signs, like you're a Scorpio and you're Pisces, and it's like now I have to behave this way because that's how I'm supposed to be. It's like
Yeah.
my potential is really gone. I have to behave in a certain way. And if I look at the logical levels of alignment, the Dill's level, that my identity is so much ingrained in the environment that I am creating myself, and I am supposed to be um, intellectual because my star signs tells me that I have to be intellectual, or I'm supposed to be jealous or angry because I am a certain star sign, and I mean, what crap. So I think it works that way. But it's the psychometric thing is the one that you're talking about. It's really, really beautiful, because that's something I'm also doing with my own EI assessment. So you do know that obviously I train people in emotional intelligence and so on.
Mm.
So one of the things that they do is that they come in and they take an emotional intelligence assessment. Uh, so the way so now I've developed a pretty robust system, and I'm now putting it in an app and everything. Um, so the way we send out the report based on assessment is not labeling. It's just scores. Okay, so this is the score from your peers on this competency versus here. These are the outliers versus others within your scores, and these are the behavior patterns that are coming out. Your
Mm.
patterns, your things. It doesn't matter with anyone else, because it doesn't really matter, because no two people are really going to be similar, even if they're born to the same household, raised by the same parents, even if they're twins.
Mm.
They cannot be the same. So why compare? I mean, that's, I think, is celebration of uniqueness and the differences,
Mm.
while respecting that particular difference, which is something that is really lacking now in the world that we see today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. And so you probably know this about me anyway, but I am an optimist. I mean, it's tough living in the world at the moment, I will say, and a lot of people are experiencing things much worse than I'm fortunate enough
You
to.
are a pure optimist. Sometimes I
I
wonder how you do that.
I really am. And actually thinking about emotional intelligence, I am optimistic that even though the world is we, as the Chinese say, we're living in challenging times, I do feel and I believe passionately that there are more and more people who are questioning the way things are and living in our heads and dissociated from communities, from other people, from ourselves often, and who are seeking from an emotionally intelligent perspective. There's got to be more to life than this. And for me, the reason that's so exciting is it's a journey from here below the neck.
All the way down.
And and that's where I think I probably once told you the story of one of my first senior executive coachees after I'd done embraining. The board had asked me to go and work with him, coach him with regard to emotional intelligence. And so you get a little bit of a picture about why might they be asking me to do that. So I went in, tried to have no agenda, and he had a copy of Daniel Goleman's book on the corner of the desk. And before I could say anything, he patted the book and he said, I've read Emotional Intelligence a couple of times actually, and I pretty comprehensively understand it. You don't need to tell me anything about emotional intelligence. And in that moment, I thought, of course, he's doing emotional intelligence, or he thinks he's doing it from his head. Yeah, cognitively. He doesn't recognize that this is about what's driving him, drivers, values, his feelings, emotions. And that's spilling out in his behavior on the people around him at work and probably at home as well. So that was an interesting coaching assignment. And over time, he made incredible progress. It was a real privilege to work with him.
Yeah, most people actually, I have noticed now, even in my own self, and thank God for mBIT and a few other things that actually helped me listen to my, below the neck and the somatic awareness that I finally got. But most people, I feel today, do not feel, they think about their feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's such a sad state to be in, right? It's big numbness. It's
Yeah.
global numbness syndrome or something.
It really is, and it's that global numbness that you talk about. It is dissociation. Our head is designed. It has 87 billion neurons for a good reason. It's a powerhouse of computational processing.
Yeah,
We need it. It's essential to us. And one of the downsides is if we become entranced by living in our heads, then we divide things up, we objectify, and we dissociate. Now, in a world that's a bit complex and challenging and sometimes painful, I can understand and have compassion for why we might dissociate, because, as you say, there are temptations towards being numb rather than experiencing pain. However, actually we lose the plus sides as well as the downsides if we do that. So really the journey for all of us, and I speak as somebody who is very much a work in progress, absolutely every single day, is to journey below that, to at least incorporate our heart intelligence and our gut intelligence. And it's a guy that you may be aware of, Michael Hall. He's written plenty of books, lots of books in NLP as a master trainer, and he talks about meta states and how actually often people aren't angry; they are sad about being angry or fearful about being angry. So they have a state about a state. And that is exactly what you talked about thinking their way through feelings rather than actually experiencing them and feeling them and noticing that whatever that is, that feeling will pass. And perhaps if we ask ourselves, okay, what's it here to tell me for what purpose is this here, then we can actually gain something from it, even if it's not a comfortable emotion, um, and recognize direction it's leading us in.
Yeah, and on it's such a uh, amazing thing. These meta states that uh, if you ask someone that it's it's a powerful question whenever you ask it. What is the purpose of this feeling? Most people haven't thought about it because
Mm.
I think people not we are in meta states, but we're somewhere like in the middle. So there is the actual state and there's a meta state, and we keep moving here and there. And when someone talks you up and says, "Oh, what is it that you really are?" and they're like, we don't know. We sad, or are we really fearful, or are we really angry, or
Mm.
and what is that you want to achieve? That's the global numbness that we're talking about. And I
Mm.
think it has to do. I mean, for me, it was definitely a protective mechanism, given my own childhood experiences, uh, and it comes shows up as a form of resilience in our times. But what that's really creating is a zombie population, so to say.
Mm. Yeah, that's a sad thing to acknowledge, and also I recognize it. Um, Sometimes in myself and often in clients or coachees, and more generally an observation in society. It's really interesting, isn't it? This. So I have a an observation or a sense that what people interpret as resilience in our modern society is kind of almost being obstinate through gritted teeth. It's the head's idea of what resilience is, rather than being sufficiently flexible
Yeah,
to find our flow. There's a beautiful quote which is, "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape." I get this
beautiful.
idea of a beautiful willow tree that can
Yeah,
actually go with the flow and still be whole, still be itself, still find its own way of being, rather than being so rigid, which is what a lot of people, when they say, "Oh, I need to be more resilient," they're meaning mentally resilient, which again is that gritted teeth rigidity, which interestingly enough, actually isn't necessarily very emotionally intelligent, as you would teach. It's also not physiologically intelligent.
it
It's
isn't.
not. It's pathological. It leads to illness and disease, as opposed to wellness, um, and being happy and long lived.
Yeah, it takes up being resilient in your head. I think takes up a lot more energy
Mhm.
than being present and being resilient and flexible in the truest sense of it, which is, well, this is what I need, and this is what my heart and gut and brain aligned demand.
Yeah.
And that takes that doesn't take energy, that actually conserves energy, because then you know which battle to fight, versus head brain, which is always obstinate and always trying to figure out a way. And I think a lot of people who think we will never give up and who find it very difficult to give up are people who are not really listening to their gut or to their heart at all, particularly their gut, because
Yeah.
their gut is telling them this is not on, my friend. But they'd
Yeah.
be like, no, 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 I'm going to do it. Yeah, I've been there. I had a business that I did, and a few other things that I did not want to give up.
Mm.
uh, there was an emotional connection, and there was this self belief that, oh well, I am resilient, I will figure out a way. And it's right there in front of me that this is not worth fighting, but I was fighting it because that was the fake head based identity I had created. not align. So yeah, that's something that happens. On the identity thing though, this thing that you talked about people and the labels, uh,
Mm.
right at the start. Uh, I asked this question in my NLP class whenever we studying together, and I asked them, who are you really? And the answers that I get are exactly this one. Well, I'm a teacher, I'm a mother, I am this, and I'm that. And the since you're from England, you understand cricketing terms. So the one that they get clean bold on is, when I ask them, all right, these are just roles, these are just labels. Who really are you if you were to describe yourself, introduce yourself? Who really are you beyond these things, without these things? If you were stripped of all these things, what would you be? So that's my
Mm.
question to you as well.
Mm. It's a beautiful one. I would say there's not a lot of words. Interestingly, there's a lot of images. There's a lot of feelings. I can feel some emotion. Um, some of the words that are a bit like you see a word cloud sometimes with lots of
Yeah.
words in it. So there's a bit of a word cloud going on for me at the moment. Um, I'm a lover of life. I do love life. I feel so lucky, so lucky. And I'm an explorer, an adventurer, definitely a process. There's there's
Definitely a process.
there's only a continuum. There's no single thing. Even literally this morning, I was having a conversation with my husband around when we moved to France, where we are now, about 4.5 years ago. Um, what's changed for me since then? And where will I be in another 2 years, 4 years in myself? I don't mean physically or geographically. So yeah, continuing. I'm a learner. That's a powerful one for me. There's definitely some identity level at that. There's definitely a whole host of values that are linked and intermingled around that one. Learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, for me, and for those of your audience who are NLPers, there's a real complex equivalence for me around learning and living. The two, if you're living and you're not learning, for me, you're kind of doing it wrong. And that's
Yeah.
judgmental, but I'm mostly judging myself on that one. Um, and it means for me, what's inherent in that is there's always more possibilities. And possibilities are life giving, health giving. They're kind of some of the evidence that I use that I'm alive and I'm on purpose, on mission.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a beautiful thought. Um, you had me at lover of life, but when you
Mm.
said learning and living, the complex sequence of that, I mean, I see that in your life. And um, as I look back at the arc, from UK to South Africa, from anthropology to occupational psychology and retail, I think the one thing that you taught us during mBIT was, we are a process. And I see that.
Mm.
So in a way, uh, you recognize that you were a process long before you knew that that is what it is supposed to be.
Mm.
In official terms, so to say. Like we learned it from you, but you were living it already.
That's a really interesting point, and I hadn't really considered that before, as bizarre as it may sound. And actually, if I look back, some of the things, do you know, yeah. Thank you for that, actually, Adnan. It's one of the reasons that I am so passionate about sharing mBIT and mBraining with people generally is because one of the main things it's done for me is it's explained things. It's given a framework to things that I intuitively felt all along. And it's made that which is inherently complex very simple. And it's also shown that things that are inherently simple have layers, turtles all the way down, to quote the NLP. So many more layers. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I'm so
I
sorry.
think that's okay.
My
I think I
internet.
lost you for a minute.
Yeah. So we're back and we're good. So I heard you until the time when you were saying that one of the reasons that you love sharing embed and embraining is, and then the
Yeah.
lights went out from you.
So one of the reasons I'm so passionate about sharing mBIT and mBraining with as many people as possible in my lifetime is it explained so much for me and gave me a framework to continue exploring myself, working with clients, helping them explore for themselves. It made that which is inherently complex in life truly simple, and also gave me more that which was apparently simple would be layers and layers and layers and layers, and nuances. So yeah, it's one of the great privileges that I came across and started learning mBIT and mBraining, and yeah, the chance to use that for myself in my own life to live as good a life and as happy a life as I can, but also to share it with other people, either through training or coaching, so that other people can do that for themselves. Because my best case scenario is if other people can feel they're making their best lifing and they're coming to their own wisdoming, that's got to be good for not only them, but other people around them and the world ultimately. Um, so, yeah, start small and go global, hopefully. Hello.
Yeah.
I'm also identity level a cat mum.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's a lucky cat. Uh,
This is
she's
the other
beautiful.
one. This is the daughter.
Oh, this is the other one.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like grandchild kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So if I would just look back at the journey, so there's anthropology, then you went into the corporate world, uh, HR and occupational psychology. What what prompted you to be there in the first place, and then ultimately move from there? What part
From
of identity shift?
in terms of moving from the corporate world
Yeah.
into
So from anthropology you went into HR, and from HR you
yeah,
moved further. So
yeah.
it's not a job interview, but I'm just looking at the identity shifts that are happening there.
No, it's a really good point. And I think all along, this is one thing I have reflected on. I was looking for a way of living and making a living that was around facilitating people to be their best self. And so when I studied anthropology and politics at university, it was because I was fascinated in people and how different people all are. And then after university, I went into retail management because I didn't really know what else to do. And there were a lot of people around, and I got to meet a lot of people. So that was great. And then I realized actually that was really about sales and numbers and statistics rather than people. So I moved into HR, and I'm a bit of a slow learner. So it was a couple of years before I realized that actually HR is often about, or it certainly was then, about statistics, wage overspends, absence statistics, and not so much about the people. And I had the opportunity to do some training, and it lit me up from the inside. And I realized this is about people's potential. This is about supporting people to be the best them that they can be. So then I moved into training and organization development and leadership development, and then I was definitely enjoying that, and I was in a position of leading a shared services program of for an organization. All of the back office departments were being outsourced, and I and my team made ourselves redundant, and I set up in my own business, and I'm so lucky to have been doing what I absolutely love ever since. So I've been training people, coaching people, supervising people, teaching NLP, teaching mBIT, and I'm incredibly grateful to meet people like you, people that I've seen a couple of people's names pop up. Sana, hello, and Sofian, hello. I didn't know who else's names popped up, but I have the best life. I get to meet the best people, people who care. So it's heart stuff. People who care and give of themselves. And that's all you can ask of anybody. So I am blessed that I get to do that and make a living. And I'm also glad that I am taking my own medicine in terms of making choices that support that. So there's another quote that we use that you'll remember well from mBIT coach certification, which is all true knowing is in doing. So following your values, having the best of intentions, being very heart led is good and a good place to start. You then need to gather information and facts that help you pass that and plan that. But if you then don't take action on it, if you don't get courageous and take that first step and another step, at best, it's only ever going to be beautiful dreams or plans. We need to act upon it to bring it into the world and into our life. So all of our intelligences are phenomenally important and powerful when, as you said, when they're aligned. So yeah, it's not just about following our heart or using our head. We also need to be courageous and take the steps to make it so.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what has been courageous for you and aligned for you?
Mm. So there's been a few particularly courageous points in my life. I think some of them, I think about, past times in my life when I was living from fear at that point. And interestingly enough, it was when I first started tuning into my other than conscious. Some people call it unconscious or subconscious. And I allowed it to take leadership at a point in my life and make some pretty big decisions. And it led me. And unsurprisingly, it was looking after me. It was conspiring for my wholeness, my health, my happiness. And that's why I'm a huge fan of my other than conscious these days. I listen to it all the time, very intently, and I factor it into all decisions. Um, And also, I think in the past few years, there's, like any of us, there's been some tough times, either when maybe some business conditions have been not so favorable, have been challenging. I think any of us who've had our own business, if we're honest, have had some tough times.
Yeah.
And as you said, being truly resilient by getting flexible and also a little bit stubborn, appropriately so and positively so. And also sometimes when there's been some relationships that have, when I've been hurt or I've been disappointed, or I've been surprised by the way someone's been, um, just finding the courage to keep going, to take that next step, to hang in there, so to speak. I think that's when courage has really come to the fore for me personally.
Does the optimism help?
Hugely. That's a really interesting thing. As I just reflect on that, there's a whole load of sensations in my body. You might remember one of my tells, we each have our own tells. Sometimes people's eye will twitch or their nose will twitch or whatever it might be. With me, it's the hairs on my arms, so I always get goosebumps. It's my autonomic nervous system's sending me a signal. And I definitely had goosebumps just now when you asked me that question. I don't know who I would be without hope and optimism, truly. It feels like, and it's, by the way, it's not, sometimes it feels like in our world, optimism or hope are characterized as wishy-washy or weak or namby-pamby, soft and fluffy. They're not. For me, optimism is hardcore. So we have an expression, certainly in the English language, punk as, meaning, and living in France, people sort of go, it's like, for me, optimism it's a lot easier to be pessimistic at the moment than it is optimistic. It takes, I believe the Spanish call them cojones. It takes cojones to be optimistic and to keep taking a step forward, even when things are tough. And so for me, optimism and hope are, they're an act of faith, even in the face of challenge. Yeah, I wouldn't want to travel this journey that we're all on, that I'm certainly on, without optimism and hope.
Yeah, it's very touching, but I mean, skeptics would argue that um, we're not pessimists. We're just being pragmatic. We're seeing things the way they are, and there's little to hope for. What do you think?
It's a beautiful question. I would say for me, there's a difference between pragmatism, which is being sufficiently rooted in the present moment, that and awareness, that we're aware to things that are around us. Skepticism for me is having a bit of a slant, expecting the least type slant on reality. I don't feel it's only about being pragmatic. What I would say, and so as an NLPer, you're aware, and some of your listeners or viewers might be as well, of the reticular activating system. So a little fantastic piece of kit that sits as part of our brain stem, the central nervous system. However, it is neurologically directly linked to our heart. In fact, to the part of our heart that actually causes the heart to beat from moment to moment. And interestingly enough, the majority of the electrical signaling from the heart to the RAS, the reticular activating system in our head brain, is upwards. So, despite the head brain's hallucinations, it's not in charge. Actually, it's our heart that is causing our reticular activating system. If you like, it's our filter. It's the thing that looks out into the universe and goes, oh, look, someone's got a card just like mine. Or, oh, that person's been studying that subject that I'm really into, or I've just become aware of. Or, oh, look, they've bought the mBraining book, or whatever. And because we know that neurologically is the case, for me, hope and optimism are the heart communicating. So, therefore, whatever my heart says, I hope that's the case. I expect the best to happen. That's what I manifest literally in my universe, because my reticular activating system goes searching for it out there in the universe. So I think it was Ford, the motor car company owner or founder, who said, whether a person says he can or he can't, he's right.
That's right.
So actually, the skeptic and I, neither of us are more correct or more likely to be correct than each other. It's just that I have a more enjoyable time of being my version of correct than they do. I know which way I'd rather live.
Yeah, so that's true, really. Because you can. I was just thinking also that uh, if you have to live in the future, right? If you're not choosing not to live in the present and you are choosing to live in the future or in the past, it is ultimately your choice in terms of whether you want to live in a future which has anxiety or in a future that has hope,
Yeah.
right? Because you're still creating it in your head, right? So
Yeah.
you don't have the choice. And I think a lot of resilience, or and I think that's the difference between being resilient and being having that grit, because grit forces you to choose hope every time, and resilience chooses you to forces you to inbuilt makes you choose anxiety and prepare for the worst. So it's that um, meta mindset, so to say, the basic
Yeah.
NLP, right? Whether you want to be towards or away from, because you're going to go to the future anyways. So yeah, uh, a few last things. So you've come to France. You don't live in the hustle bustle of UK anymore. You're in a quiet place, and unfortunately, I tried my best to come in, but I couldn't. But someday, uh, is it is it home? Not really physically, but is this
Mm,
something you'd say? Well, okay, yes, I am where I want to be,
mm.
and here's where I'm becoming myself more.
Wholeheartedly, literally wholeheartedly with my whole being. So the physical place that we're lucky enough to live, and as you said, we're lucky enough we live in rural southwest France. We're surrounded by orchards and fields and people who are really in touch with themselves and also the land, the seasons, nature, the earth. So we're very, very lucky to be where we're living geographically and physically. And so I love that. And that absolutely is home and feels like home. And even more than that, actually, so interestingly enough, the strap line for our place, La Maison du Cœur Calme, which is home of the calm heart, the strap line is "Come home to yourself," and that's our journey. The way I see it for all of us as human becomings is we're on a journey of coming home to our selfing, the process of being most us and fulfilled in being us, being home in our own autonomic nervous system. And the more we can do that moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day, then the more health giving that is, the more life giving that is, the more fun it is. And what I will say is the last 4.5 years here have been so far the most fun in my life, the most joyful and joyous in my life. And with regard to, you mentioned that you didn't quite get here yet, there's a beautiful saying here in southwest France, à la prochaine, meaning until the next time.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, that is an appropriate place for us to maybe conclude this conversation. But before we go, um, just a bit of end.
Mhm.
Which which brain do you think is really the ruler? We keep
So,
thinking
which
about that.
brain?
Which brain is do you think is really the ruler? Is it the heart brain or the gut brain? Certainly not the head brain, I know. But
It's a
but
beautiful question. Um, so, from mBIT coach certification, I would say um, we have a saying, the heart leads. Doesn't mean that it's more important than the other two. It
yeah.
just means that if we start with the heart, then the quality of thinking, information that we gather and process using our head will be different, will be qualitatively better,
Mm,
will be directionalized differently. And therefore, the action that we take, the way we express our identity, will be very different qualitatively and will be more wise. We're more likely to come to alignment that way.
mm.
From an mBIT master coach perspective, I would say all of the above, and our autonomic nervous system is home.
So Reb, I think I have to do the hard close that we talked about. Uh, it was beautiful as always, and surreal in a lot of ways. And the message that I'm really taking forward is hope wins, and hope is what takes us forward. So thank you for your time, and as you said in French, which I cannot translate or say, which I cannot say, but until next time. All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Adnan.
Thank
It's
you.
been an absolute joy and a pleasure. And just feel that I am, even though we're in different countries, I am giving you the biggest heart to heart, left to left hug right now.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. I'll see you around, inshallah.
See
Bye
you
bye.
around.